Davokar in the setting, in that, unlike a
All right.
number of games. Oh, okay. Looks like we're going live.
Sorry to interrupt your conversation, gentlemen.
Nah, you are good, man. So welcome in, folks. And first of all, let me thank you all for joining us on a Sunday. I know it is definitely not our usual day of streaming, but as mentioned in our Discord, this is a special episode where we are sitting down with Matties Johnsson, one of the co-founders of Free League Press, and the creator of Symbaroum, and he's also the game director for The Walking Dead. Sorry, my brain decided to take a second to restart. But enough babbling from me. Matthias, if you would introduce yourself to the viewers and let them know who you are.
Yeah, well, I think you did a fantastic job in introducing me. So I don't know what more to say. I have been happy member of the Free League Collective since 2018, when two Swedish companies, gaming studios rather, merged into what is now Free League. And I do a little of this and a little of that. Mostly today it's writing, designing, editing, but also project management, like in the case of The Walking Dead. And Symbaroum is, as you said, I'm a co-founder or co-creator of Symbaroum, with the special focus on setting and lore and also adventure design and such. So, but yeah, Symbaroum is, if I have to pick a baby out of that's sort of mine out of all the games that we create, it would be Symbaroum. Yeah,
it would be Symbaroum. And I mean, you just mentioned your focus kind of in the game creation aspect, the setting, and I will be the first to say, probably not the only one, Symbaroum hits that setting specific piece very well. It leans into the dark and dangerous. And I, for one, and again, we're guys, we're going to dive deeper into this as the talk goes on. But I like, one of the things that I do enjoy of Symbaroum is that it's not some continent or worldwide setting. You kind of really dialed it in and nailed it to a not a small setting, but a particular place that has a lot of focus, a lot of depth, and I think that is something that games of this style, and by that I mean, I want to say epic fantasy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think I'll go with that. Epic fantasies, they don't, they're very large. Which again, not a bad thing. It's not a critique. It's just I think that's become the norm now. You have these large scale worlds that have dozens, if not hundreds, of cities and towns. Where with Symbaroum, it's very contained, which I feel makes it much more personal. But anyway, Greg, Matt, please stop me from yammering on.
I think there's really something to be said of a more contained environment, but that I shouldn't say contained. It's like a smaller area, but it's got more depth. It's like comparing something like an open world like Skyrim compared to an RPG like, say, Dragon Age Origins, where Skyrim is like an ocean with the depth of a puddle, while Dragon Age Origins had a smaller area, but it was jam-packed with so much stuff, each of those areas. And that's the kind of way I see it. So I think sometimes those smaller areas can do very well if they're just really full of, just a lot of interesting things that make exploring that area very worth it.
Agreed.
Unique RP opportunities. I think that's really where it comes down to for me. Looking at I'm very excited to dive into the Walking Dead piece, but that's just a genre thing for me. But for Symbaroum, in what I've seen of the system, we haven't actually played the system yet, so we got to do that. We'll be doing a one shot of that.
Oh, we will be.
We've got our long list.
There's a long list. Yeah, there's there's Mutant Year Zero. Never ending.
So lots of reading of and really studying the lore and the mechanics behind it and what the system looks like, in which that we do so much of that. It's like, wow. But Symbaroum definitely, it stands out for having the feel of the small environment, but yet there's a lot of expansiveness to the system. There's a lot of
Oh yeah.
depth capability in the character creation. So yeah, one quick question I have for you is, okay, there's something that's been brought up many times out there. I'm kind of an old school gamer, so I look at the DM versus not versus the DM and player relationship, and a lot of the games with Free League have a more of what I would call an emphasis on the player, which I really really like. But what are your feelings on that? I mean, it's you're not rolling against your player as a DM. You're using a
No,
DD.
Symbaroum is player facing in the sense that the if that's what you're getting at.
Yep.
But I mean, I think this is not something that we have openly expressed or stated. But I think that when we talk about game design and particularly role-playing games design, we tend to regard the GM as another player. There's also supposed to have fun at the table, not only being the adversary of the players and their characters, but being an actual a player,
Right.
in the game. So yeah.
So what's the what?
That is kind of different. Sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm thinking back to the old days when we started playing, and I think this is not only a realization that we at Free League we are not alone in this. I think today, back then, the GM was sort of the enemy. The GM wanted to design adventures and run them in a way to try to best the player characters or beat them. That is not what role-playing games are about today, I think. Or do you have a different?
No, I agree with you. I think I first of all, I agree with everything you said there. Where early on, and I don't think it was by design, and by that I mean the game design. I think it was more on the personal level, meaning the DMs and the players. Somewhere along the lines, that DM versus player kind of relationship developed, and I think now it's where the shift is going more from that to the DM is helping facilitate the story and the world that the players are inhabiting. So it's more of a symbiotic relationship.
I think it's a situation where the industry, just my opinion, but the industry is maturing. Is my thoughts on it, because you look back at the history of it, really looking at, okay, the beginning, more or less the old school D&D dungeon crawl. There was really no. It was more like it was RP in a board game setting. So you really were the enemy in that case as a DM, because your job was to provide the challenge and to fight the players in many ways. Where I'm very very interested in this shift to creating that player facing game, because it puts the player in a situation where as a player, it puts me in a situation where I now have the player agency is all in my side of what's going on, because I'm the one who's rolling against me and for me, and you know what I mean. And I love that, and it also changes the dynamic for the RP when you're really looking at, okay, what are the results of what I'm doing. If I'm really in control on both sides of that, whether in a combat situation, obviously, but whether I'm being attacked or I'm attacking something, I'm on both sides of that transaction. And that's, to me, that's fantastic. It took a little bit to shift my thinking because, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. So the old school dungeon crawl was role playing games to me for a very long time. And looking at that shift, and we've really had a unique opportunity to experience that with Free League Press's games because, I mean, most of the games in the lineup are designed with that engine, with that in mind, and it's phenomenal. So that's why I dig into that piece, Matthias, is because it's something that is. I think you hit on it. Maybe not necessarily unique. There's a lot of games that are kind of going in that direction. Game creation is going in that direction at this point. So just that also leads me to this question: how do you feel about answer, don't answer, however you want to put this? There's this move right now, whether it's a positive move or a negative move, to create GM-less games.
Ooh,
What are your thoughts on that?
That's a spicy question.
It certainly is.
Well, role-playing games, GM-less. I'm guessing you're thinking. I mean, you have a lot of board games or semi kind of role-playing ish board games, like all the.
One that comes to mind is Gloomhaven.
Yeah, for instance, where you cooperate towards a common goal, and I don't see why you couldn't do. I don't know if it's for me. I love to have the game master as as one of you said, making role-playing games, designing them is much about trying to facilitate storytelling and joint storytelling, cooperative storytelling. Having the game master as sort of a real-time, not director maybe, but as a representative of the setting and the lore and all the creatures that inhabit the world where the stories take place, I think that is one of the things that makes role-playing games so fantastic. And I mean, there's one thing that is kind of really hot right now, I guess, is solo play.
Yeah.
We actually have a solo mode in the core rulebook of the Walking Dead universe role-playing game.
Nice.
I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, and we have solo modes so that is obviously sort of GM-less, and I guess you could use those rules to expand and play together with some friends, but without a game master, using the solo rules.
Right.
So yeah, but yeah, do I think it's good or bad? I don't have an opinion at all. I may have a preference in the games I design and the games I want to play myself, but I mean, yeah, there's not much you can do when it comes to designing role-playing games that is, as long as people have fun, right?
There you go.
I mean,
I agree.
Yeah,
there you go.
I agree with
Yeah.
you. I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I prefer to play a game with a DM or GM, which are interchangeable.
every game has its own term.
And I prefer to make those similar games where a GM will be that storyteller, kind of the arbiter of the rules, help set the pace, that kind of thing. I am glad that as Greg, as you said, that the industry is maturing, both the creators and then the players are kind of maturing to the point where it's not a competitive situation between the DM and the players. Now it's cooperative to tell that overall grander story. Though I guess my take on DM-less games, again, to each their own, and I think to say that it doesn't have its place is, I think, incorrect, in that we've kind of seen DM-less, or we've seen instances where the enjoyer of, I can't say player because I've seen them primarily in books, the choose your own adventure books. So we've seen kind of that example before in choose your own adventure books. So I don't think it'd be too much of a huge leap to design something like that. Do I think it's going to take off and replace, D&D and every other DM focused or DM applicable game? Probably not. But I think it'll have its place. It'll carve out its little niche, and people will enjoy it. And
I feel like I opened the can of worms with that. So
No, I mean, let me open yet another can of worms.
Awesome.
Because having this discussion makes me think about the should we call it possibilities with AI.
Oh, I was actually about to get there.
That is
when it comes
another
to
can of worms.
when it comes to acting as a GM, and I've actually this summer I was on vacation, was a bit bored, so I started teaching a chatbot about a setting. And it took half an hour to an hour to sort of set the basic parameters. Then I went on an adventure in that setting. Obviously, this was me. This was more like a choose your own adventure kind of style, and the bot got the concept. I didn't have to teach it what a choose your own adventure was. It just got what I was trying to accomplish. So no, I could have stayed in that adventure and that story for more or less the whole vacation if it weren't for the fact that my dear wife, sort of wanted me to tag along on other stuff as well. So.
That happens.
Tried things similar to that in the past. AI Dungeon or Novel AI, kind of have them do this kind of choose your own adventure type stuff. And it's been a while since I've done it, and AI has definitely progressed since then. It definitely is entertaining, though my experience, I mean, I did have a lot of fun with it. But my experience that oftentimes maybe I wasn't handling it quite right, because to really get good use out of AI, you gotta know how to handle it. That's it. It had difficulty keeping track of certain things, especially the personalities of certain characters and stuff like that. But
interesting.
I don't know. It was still fun because sometimes you really never know where it's going to go, and just a little. It gets a little wacky, and I think there's some fun there.
Yeah.
No, but there is. I think you can. Have you played Descent?
I have
the board game Descent. There's another one I was thinking about. Yeah, say like Mansions of Madness.
Haven't played it, but I know that one. That brings a clear bell.
The thing is that the first iteration of those games, when they came out, they had sort of a GM function. So one of the players had to be the game engine, so to speak. And you had that situation where one of the players were trying to best the other players who played the characters.
Okay.
So, but since a couple of years back, you have an app handling the mechanics instead. So you have the board, and then you have a tablet or whatever. So you can play together, all of you, and I can see that happening in role-playing games as well down the line. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you need to teach
an AI
program, and an
Right.
AI before it can be, can act also as a voice actor, and you will probably want to have it on a screen with facial expressions and different skins for different characters and whatnot.
Yeah, I can honestly see that happening at some point. I think.
Two things real quick. I definitely I want to come back to this piece, and that's the phenomena around, because there's a growing piece out there where people are using MMO platforms for RP base. But I have a question from the audience really quick that I want to get out there to you, Matthias. So this is from Harper. Harper's actually one of our cast members, but she's also a teacher. The question is, I have a question that my youngest wanted me to ask. He is 10 and getting his first experience with D&D on Mondays, and some of my high school students. He's wanting to learn more about D&D, but doesn't know where to look. Do you have any suggestions for him that could help him expand his knowledge, as he has been having an absolute blast playing it? I think D&D is probably, since that's his first experience, is probably more related to role-playing games in general, but all you, man.
Well, I do play D&D, but not very much, and I'm rarely the dungeon master, or most often the player in those cases. So I'm not the best person to ask when it comes to D&D. Obviously, there are a number of really cool starter sets that are, and we have them too if the question pertains to role-playing games in general. Our store, you can find starter sets for many of our games, but the D&D starter sets are typically very good. It's not very much to read. It's you have pre-generated characters and whatnot that you can work on. But then there is this thing that maybe you can expand on, that's called D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that a place where you also can go as a newbie and find others that can help you explain stuff and resources for getting your game going and whatnot?
Oh yeah. D&D Beyond is definitely a good tool for, I think, anyone, both newcomers and veterans alike, to use to kind of fill the gaps. But I think you hit on a very, very good resource that's, at least from my experience, often overlooked, which is like the starter kits. Because you get, with the starter kit, Harper, to help answer that question, you get, again, pre-gen characters, you get a story that you can follow, and you get access to basically everything you need to play a game. And it's broken down very simply. It's not as overwhelming as, say, like a fully done player's handbook or like a full campaign module. They add tons of extra information that for a new player could be frightening. So yeah, I mean, like Matthias said, I'd start with a starter kit and go from there. And then D&D Beyond, again, is another good resource if you wanted to dive into some rules, some lore, some character stuff, some game, related mechanics. And then YouTube is another good resource I would check out.
I was exactly going to say that actual plays are a very good way to not only get a sense of what role-playing games can be, how they can, I mean, I remember when we started playing in the 80s, I couldn't fully appreciate it at the time, but I think our parents were kind of worried what was going on behind those closed doors, because they sort of it's so if you haven't played Dungeons and Dragons or some other role-playing game, it's very difficult, I think, to imagine how it all plays out, what it looks like when people sit down at the table with their, you know, the beard full of cookie crumbles and the table spilled with you know, Jolt Cola and whatnot.
Talking
Jolt.
weird.
Wait.
Talking weird voices. So actual plays, just finding actual plays where people are playing, and it's a big help, I would say.
Agreed.
Have you ever had ski?
Ski.
Yeah.
Ski. What's that, Greg? Okay, now, Greg, what's this? What's the ski?
I feel like there's something from before my time.
Yeah.
I'm from the north of Sweden. I don't have ski. I have skis.
Skis, yes.
Just one.
I've done that too, but
so what is ski, Greg? I'm curious.
Well, ski. Matthias mentioned Jolt. Well, Jolt is another one, but ski was kind of in the same vein.
Okay.
When I was a kid growing up, that was like one of the I don't know if it was a generic brand or what it was, but it was one of those energy soda drinks, heavy fruity flavor to it. So, but yeah, anyway.
Interesting.
I don't think I haven't seen it in so long. I don't think it's even made anymore, but.
They probably don't even make it, because I'm willing to bet the formula probably had some not so good things in it. Keep you awake and playing games. But no, I agree with you, Matthias, on that. Yeah, parents. I would even wager nowadays, even though probably less so. You know, parents who hear their kids are playing D&D are probably looking at them like, "What the hell is that? Like, what are you doing? Over there casting spells and throwing dice and slaying witches and stuff. Like, what are you doing?"
But I mean, as I said, today it's if Mama and Papa are worried, just show them an episode of Critical Role or whatever, and they can hopefully set their mind at ease.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully we're past the days where there's that whole like scare that, you know, if your kids are playing, you know, D&D or role playing games, that they're like worshiping Satan and stuff like that. It's like, what? So, huh?
So I actually have a question for you, Matthias. How did Symbaroum come about? Like, what was kind of the origin story of that?
Man, this is a really long one. I'll try to. Let's see where to start. I think me and my a group of friends here I live in Umeå in the north of Sweden, and we played a lot of games together and even did some LARP and whatnot in the 80s and 90s. And by the turn of the millennium, we sort of started joking about wanting to make our own role-playing game. And at that time, we were just shy of 30. So we had sort of, you know, come some ways in terms of education, and some of us even started looking at some form of career. So we knew a little bit about how to make things come to fruition and become real, not just fantasize. So it started out with us talking to acquiring the license, the right to make a role-playing game of something called Mutant, which you today may know as Mutant Year Zero. Me and my friends, we did the version before that. It was called Mutant Heirs of Doom, I think you could translate it to. It was released in Swedish only. And we did it as a hobby project for like 8 years. Never getting the only ones that got a little bit of pay out of this was freelance artists and whatnot. But we released upward of 20 products over the course of 7 years before, families, kids, houses, careers, and whatnot. And we say, man, we can't do this anymore.
Right.
So we basically closed shop for 2 years, maybe. And then me and some of those friends were on a role-playing games trip to Istanbul. Yeah, you heard me right. We just to get away from the kids and the families, we went to places like London, Oxford, Istanbul, and to play role-playing games.
When you talk about get away, you mean really get away?
Yeah. So, and on this particular trip in 2012, we more or less came to the conclusion that we couldn't live without making games. And we hadn't made a fantasy game yet. We had made a mutant game, is sort of post-apocalypse. We made Coriolis, which is sort of a arabesque space opera. And we really wanted to do a fantasy role-playing game. And I was like, okay, but if we're going to do this, we have to do it for real, because I don't have time for a hobby. So if we're going to do this, let's try to do it right and try to, translate it into English, because in Sweden we are like 10 million people. Not very many of them play role-playing games. So you can't live off making Swedish role-playing games. That's just not possible.
Right.
So we said, let's give it a try. And we had a couple of days in Stockholm, me and my friends, where we sort of, we Googled a lot of artwork and historical sites and whatnot, and we had a folder where we collected stuff that we wanted. And while we were doing this, we started discussing sort of major points of influence. So the biggest one, I would say, was the campaigns that we ourselves played when we were younger. So we took a lot from that, at least in terms of, we always try to make games that we ourselves would love to play. So that another very early sort of point of inspiration was or basically two of them. Princess Mononoke?
Yes, love that
animated.
Yeah, I've seen that a dozen times at least.
So and this was actually a German reviewer who very early on said that, described Simbrom as the love child of Princess Mononoke in Game of Thrones. So
I can see that.
Yeah, it's the Princess Mononoke is all about the conflict between civilization and nature, and what happens when nature can actually fight back, so to speak. Game of Thrones is fantasy, but more mature or more serious. It's kind of grimdark. I wouldn't call Simbrom grimdark. It's more dark,
right?
without very much of the grim. But so and from there on, it took a couple of years before we had the Swedish version out in 2014, and then we started translating it. We ran an Indiegogo campaign.
Nice.
That wasn't, it was successful, but barely. But we managed to get the game out there, and it's been a marathon, establishing. I don't know what we were thinking, trying to establish a totally new brand. It's
work.
It's so much work, and just spreading awareness and making people. Today in 2018 we merged with our friends at Free League, and since then we have sort of yeah, all the brands we do both licensing stuff like Walking Dead and Alien and Blade Runner and
Mhm.
whatnot.
Yeah.
And we have our own brands, so hopefully that's those well-known IPs can help bring awareness
To everything else,
our
yeah.
own obscure
Mm.
ones.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we will be doing a playtest, or rather a deep dive of Simbarom here in the coming weeks, and a playtest as well. We that's kind of one of the things we try to do. We actually have a one shot of The Witcher coming up soon, but we try to showcase the systems and then show them in action, so to speak, because I think that's the best way an audience can really start to understand a particular system. And you did mention one thing that I want to touch on, is the interplay between the environment and the players. And I mean, that's not nothing new. You see that in other systems, but I
Mm.
feel like with Simbarom, that's core to the gameplay. Is
Oh,
like
yeah.
you are, you have your adventurers who are entering into the forest of Davokar, if I'm remembering properly, and it's not just forests or rivers or rocks. It's alive. It's a living, breathing entity that
Mm.
will fight back. And I honestly, I think that German reporter hit the nail on the head. Like
Mm.
it from what I've seen of watching a couple of Let's Plays myself and some reviews on the game. It's unique in that regard, where not only is the environment a place that your adventurers will inhabit, but it's a living, breathing entity all its own. But it's also not foolish, and by that I mean the trolls and the things that you encounter in Davokar are just as wary of you as you are of them.
Mm.
And combat is very much something that, if it can be avoided, let's just avoid it. You go your way, I go my way, and everybody lives. And I like that. Me and Greg were actually having a conversation about combat in most role-playing games in this day, in this day and age, even now, where I think the way I put it was it's too easy.
Let's face it. Our players are murder hobos for certain.
They are.
So-
Yeah. We
I don't know
play.
what you're talking about.
Matt is one of them. He's a murder hobo.
And you were going to play Simbarom, you said?
No,
It
we
can be-
definitely are.
It can be a very short session, indeed.
And here's the thing. I like that. I like that change, because it's not just Simbram. When we were talking with Tomas, he mentioned this is you mentioned in Blade Runner, and then we've experienced it playing the Alien RPG, which we actually just wrapped up a short 5-episode kind of let's play of that. And yeah, I for one, I like the change in the combat situation, where in D&D, and I'm just gonna pick on D&D because it's the most well known. Combat there it's easy. Like, I'm sorry, for me, the stakes aren't high enough. The stakes aren't high enough. I can rules as written. I can take a long rest, sleep it off, and I'm good to go the next day, even though I just got kicked in the face by a minotaur.
Yeah. I mean, I think that part's kind of like up to the player preference, because D&D very much plays into, like, it's a fantasy where you want to be a hero, so it wants to make you feel like a badass hero.
Well,
and I think it does that, but I think a lot of other systems, you're not necessarily a badass hero, but you're someone that's like trying to survive in this very harsh environment, so that entails something of a more a system that requires a little more caution in the way you play it.
And that's for me. I think that is the boon of the maturity of the industry, both players and game creators. But since partnering with Free League and us, have sitting down and reading into these systems and seeing the sense of realism injected into them, in that combat shouldn't be your first option, because you may not be walking away from that. Like, there's a good likelihood you're gonna die.
I couldn't put it better. I mean, yes, a lot of our games are much more deadly than certain other games are, but they are not more deadly because we totally enjoy total party kills.
I guess it's just me then.
That's not the point. I mean, the point is that and especially if you're 2 weeks out in a wild forest where you have no little hut where you know that healer is going to make all the boo-hoos go away. You I mean, you will try to avoid combat as long as possible, and those you meet will as well. So it's really about forcing, when we're talking role-playing game, right? Trying to force people to play their role, their part. Not charge headfirst into the fray, because you know that if you die, you can just go into the other room, roll up a new character, and just then join the game again.
Keep going. Yeah.
But try to make it a story that, because I think that's also a question for question of immersion.
It is.
If you aren't afraid of what might happen to your characters, you are not in character, right?
I 100% agree with you on that.
It's about like marrying your game mechanics to the setting and like what that setting's supposed to be. Like, for example, I mean, we just got done with our short Alien campaign, and that like combat it's very easy to quickly find yourself like injured, and like it's and it has a big emphasis on stealth, meaning that's like, when you meet like say the alien, you want to do anything but fight it up front. The best way to do it, like, unless you have like a combat focused team with a bunch of heavy equipment, you need to sneak around that thing and by God hope it doesn't notice you. and that's the same. That's Alien, because that it's a horror. It's based on a horror franchise where this big dangerous thing is nigh unkillable. So you need to just not get killed by it, and the game mechanics reflect that. And I think that's the difference between like say something like D&D and like something like Symbaroum. It's about the story that's trying to be told by the game, and how people, the level of danger compared to the people that live in that world and how they handle it.
So that, hey, old man Garrus, welcome in.
Hey, old man Garrus, welcome in, man.
I got a couple of things I wanted to. First thing, I just wanted to make a quick statement. We've gotten a little bit away from it at this point, but that what you were talking about earlier, Matthias, is exactly the reason why. Actually, old man Garrus actually was a big push for us to align with Free League Press as we were kind of getting into this scope of things. But after we had that opportunity and really sat down and talked with like Thomas and Bowl and several of the other creators involved with Free League Press, it became very evident to us that okay, yeah, this is a community of people, and their focus aligns very much with the direction that we're going, and that's fantastic from the standpoint of the player agency piece, the depth of actually role playing versus the board game / role playing, in getting into that story piece. And for me personally, that is absolutely what it's all about, is telling a story. and really getting into that. You create a role playable character so that you can play the role, not just if all you're doing it for is creating a character so that you can go out and bash and slash things. I mean, there are games that are created. Blood Bowl. There are games that are created to do that, where there's not a lot of role play in it. You just create, there's mechanics there. You create this character and you go use the mechanics to do whatever you do. Monopoly. But the role playing piece to it, this is a long way to get to my question. I apologize. But I talk a lot. I'm sorry. When it comes to your, how would you describe your approach to role-playing games in general? I mean, with that in mind, that role-playing piece, I mean, how do you really, as a player and as a creator, how do you see this?
I think Matt was onto something earlier. I mean, sometimes you just want to roll some dice, drink some beer, or non-alcoholic beer. It can be non-alcoholic. It don't have to be. Yeah. And
why would you want to do that?
And have a laugh, right? And then there are games that can do that for you. Whereas what I have always had this, I don't know if it's a passion or a sort of a goal, trying to prove to myself and to others that role-playing games can be something else, something that has much more to do with immersion rather than escape, if you know what I mean. Being there, really, not at the table, but in the setting. So I would say that the greatest experiences I've had myself as a player and as a GM are those moments where role-playing games, tabletop role-playing, really shine compared to board games and other stuff. I mean, you play a board game, of course you get excited when you roll have a good dice roll and you win the game. But the best moments in role-playing games I've had is have to be combat or the thing that resolves the story or the end boss of the adventure. It can be like yours and the others players' characters being in a tavern discussing what to do next on your adventure, and it can be like 5 hours of serious discussions and you are so there. So and that is something that I think that what makes role-playing games stand out compared to other forms of entertainment games.
I agree.
We spent well, a couple of years, I would say, but we spent a couple of years more or less pro bono creating content for an online community that is, I'm not gonna, that's not even really rules light. It's like rules no.
Yeah. I mean,
it was in an MMO. Like we mentioned that like slightly before. Like we're playing in MMOs, and that's what we were doing. That's where the three of us actually met in this community. And I mean, it had its own like custom system. I wouldn't call it anywhere as complex as what you see in like traditional role playing games. But I mean that's where we all met.
It was a decent foundation for what it was.
Yeah. I don't think it was bad, but I think it was simple because they wanted to get people into it without having to spend a long time studying. And I don't know. I took part in its story creation and also its mechanics as part of those teams, and a lot of fun there, honestly.
That's probably what led you
I-
to go into school for what you went to school for.
My part was the breaking the rules department.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, he was
Oh,
very
yeah.
good at that.
No, and another thing that I would characterize myself as a player and designer that love big epic stories or campaigns or
Mhm.
adventure paths or whatever you want to call them, because that is also something that and yeah, like most things you like, it's because you learned to love them when you were 13 to 16, 17,
Yeah.
when you were young. And I had some fantastic experiences playing Enemy Within Warhammer Fantasy, if you remember.
Yep.
We had some really cool Advanced Dungeons and Dragons campaigns in Forgotten Realms. We ran Masks of Nyarlathotep and other cool, Horror at the Orient Express for Call of Cthulhu. These massive, really grand stories, and you got a sense that, we did our own stuff as well, like smaller adventures, dungeons, and whatnot. That we could play a couple of weekends and then move on to the next. But these grand campaigns, you had the sense that you were discovering something that was already there, something that you had that sense of wonder,
Like more of an epic story type of thing.
yeah. And you couldn't wait to get back to the table, to that gateway into the story that wasn't paused because you had to do your homework.
Let me guess. It was so much so that your DM looked about like me, even though he was only like 20.
Yeah.
So I actually have two questions.
I've been a GM a lot as well, so. Tugging my hair out.
Right. It's a common thing,
I don't want to say, wow. So I'm gonna go bald if I keep GMing. I guess I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, maybe I'll stay
on your players.
Maybe I'll stay a player so I can keep looking like I do now.
Yeah.
So I have actually two questions. The first one is kind of another hot take. And it comes on the heels of. So I don't know if you know the game Candela Obscura.
I know of it. Yeah.
It was released a little bit ago. For those of you who don't know, it's a game out of Darrington Press, which is the game company of the folks at Critical Role. And it is a game in the vein of words escape me. Call of Cthulhu, and it actually touches on another game that you guys over at Freely came out with, Vason, where you take on the role of an investigator. Now, my question for you specifically, and for our audience, kind of piggybacking off of the agreed upon kind of direction that we stated earlier, where it feels like the industry, both from a creative standpoint and from a player standpoint, is maturing, and we're starting to see more games in I guess the best way I can put it is the horror genre. Call of Cthulhu, obviously it's a mainstay. You have Vason, you have Candela Obscura, you have The Walking Dead. And basically the point I'm getting at is it seems like creators are now starting to, at least in that genre, are starting to very much lean into the how do I put this? The psychological horror, and not just a horror piece, but the aftermath, the toll that those worlds take on your psyche. how do you feel about that as as a creator yourself? And I'll kind of preface that particular piece with saying I personally I love it. I love that. Obviously, it's setting specific, but these games are taking into account not just the combat aspect, the physical aspect of fighting an enemy and for lack of a better way to put it, killing them and then surviving and moving on, but also the psychological aspect that comes with that. The toll that it takes on a person's psyche of being exposed to that violence, but also, in the case of Call of Cthulhu, an eldritch horror that you can't logically,
Mm.
Compartmentalize.
Comprehend.
There we go. That's a better way to put it.
Well, yeah, I haven't really thought about it that much. I think maybe it's the same thing as what we talked about earlier about the games industry becoming more mature and more aware, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe also this is an effect of designers trying to facilitate immersion, right? If you come up against you play some existentialistic horror game, you come up against Cthulhu itself, and it's all about rolling dice. Yeah, once it was, but then role-playing games were more like board games, as you said earlier, but they were also more like war games, right?
Yeah.
And I think they were primarily rule sets. Role-playing games were primarily rule sets meant to facilitate maybe not only combat but problem solving as well. Picking locks or disarming traps or whatnot. But they were rule sets, and then to give those rules an arena to come alive, you had to have some form of setting, but setting wasn't maybe the main reason why those games were made. Maybe I'm just guessing now, but does it make sense?
I think yeah, you hit on something really, really big right there. Just my personal opinion, but I think there was a time early on, where the actual lore and the immersion piece to the game was almost secondary. A lot of the games, like a lot of the games that I grew up, well, D&D included, really. I mean, if you look back at pre-second edition, the lore in the game was really just kind of starting to develop out, and it was very mechanics heavy. And Oddity was second edition, really kind of expanded upon the mechanics side, but the lore as well. But you had other games out there that were like one that I mention infrequently is Car Wars. I don't know if you're familiar with that game or not.
Yeah.
And I mean, I loved that game. It was great, but it was, I mean, when it comes to the RP piece to it, that was completely up to the player's imagination. There really wasn't much of anything there. You know what I mean? The immersion piece to it was you either want to do a Mad Max scenario with vehicles, or you're going to have to be really creative. But there's something to be said for those style of games. But I think where the maturity piece comes in is really developing into this piece with the immersion and people wanting having that true desire to tell a story. So they're creating the character, they're creating the background piece to it, writing out, who am I as this character? Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I the way I am? And that's pretty natural that people do that. Maybe not like if you're brand new into role-playing games. And once you've been playing for a while, it's pretty natural that you want to build that out. You want to flesh out that story, that character. And a lot of the older games didn't provide the venue for you to then tell the story. So you've put all this energy into developing this background, this full character picture, this view in your head of what this person was and why they were that way and where they came from, who their parents are. You know what I mean? Where was their place of birth and what was the political situation? Or many of those things can go into this. But now games are being designed in such a way that it facilitates you being able to, as a player, get that story into the game itself, and not just in your head or on a piece of paper. That's kind of how I see it.
Absolutely. I mean, we should not forget that there were really great efforts made in later years in Dungeons and Dragons, in RuneQuest, the world of Glorantha, for instance, also in Call of Cthulhu, which was ambitious, but so there were examples of games that had the ambition, really had the ambition. But I think, I mean, okay, I think you might say that the settings that were created back then was very much about defining, giving the game master a stage for pointing out enemies to the players,
right.
Or their characters rather, and then they could meet, someone who gave them money to hunt down that evil lord, or that horrible wraith, or whatever it was. But it was never assumed, I think, that the players and the characters should be a part of the moral or political landscape of power in those worlds. They were the adventurers in many ways,
right?
And it was very easily defined who was good and who was bad. And that is, if there's something that I think we see more and more today, is that
those lines are a little more blurred.
Yeah, at least in some games. I mean, there are still those kinds of games as well, but in essence, it's more about grayscale or perspectives in some games today. It's you have to take a stand every time you make a friend. You also make enemies, because that friend's got enemies, right? And so the social, if you say that the rules are sort of a system that has to make sense internally, logically, the settings can be seen as that as well. The settings are systems of relations, of friendships and animosities, of power, and yeah, those subservient and whatnot. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, just because it may be related to what we talked about earlier. If you try to create a whole universe for as a stage for playing a game, it will be kind of shallow, right?
Right.
Because you won't. Yeah. Anyway.
Too big. That we're
please explain what I tried to say. Please explain to me where I was going.
I have no idea,
man.
But
I honestly I agree with you in that. At least kind of my take on what you were saying was it's not just about the mechanics within the world. A lot of games now, I think, are starting to look at the social and societal interactions within the worlds being built, like the characters, the enemies, and the interplay between them. And you hit on something there that I want to definitely expand on is, in certain instances, yes, you have a very black and white situation, evil and good. That's very obvious. But more often than not, you'll have lines of gray. And I think, obviously in keeping with your game, Simbarom, that's very evident there, where there are instances of, hey, evil and good, but everything in Simbarom is trying to survive. Both the adventurers and the entities that live within the forest. They're trying to make it to tomorrow too. So where on the one hand, we'll use D&D as another example. Again, D&D is so easy to pick on. You'll have those, again, good and evil factions or good and evil representations, but I feel like with Simbrom and similar games, Vaesen even, where if you take a 180 and you look at the situation from the denizens, of Davokar, we'll use that as an example. The adventurer is the evil guy. Now, I'm over here just trying to live my life, and he's over here trying to come and kill me. And I like that game mechanics are starting to foster that.
Wait, the adventurer's always the hero, isn't he?
No, it's not. And I really do like I like that the game mechanics are starting to take that stuff into account. Hence
me
my
asking
earlier
that question is like the pot kettle black.
Yeah, not all games have to be like that. That would be boring,
definitely not. Yeah,
right?
Definitely not.
But Simram is definitely that game that if you say that you are you and your friends stumble on a treasure map, and you venture out into the forest in search of that treasure. When you get there are other factions already there. You have the elves there. They don't want you anywhere near this.
Nope. Did we lose him?
Uh-oh.
I think
might be having some internet issues.
Streamlabs is acting up.
No, it looks like he's still in Streamlabs. It might just be an internet thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's old ruin. They don't
There
want
we
you.
go.
Hello?
Yeah, we sort of gotcha.
Yeah, Streamlabs decided to throw a tantrum.
Okay.
For a minute.
No. Anyway, when you get to the location, you won't be alone there. There will be others at that site, and you and your friends can probably not get to that treasure or whatever it is without trying to align yourself with at least one of the groups. Maybe even try the diplomatic solution right from the get-go and gather all the present. There can be another group of treasure hunters there as well. And you end up in a situation where, of course, you as adventurers, you look at the elves as evil because they in Simbarom, elves have the same position, I usually say, as the orc would have in another fantasy role-playing game. They are sort of the default enemy.
That is an interesting juxtaposition. You don't see that ever, where the elves are considered evil.
Yeah,
but I promise you, if you get into it, it makes sense. It's not like a design. It's more like we discovered that this was the fact. That they were the enemy. Anyway, so obviously the elves regard you as, the bad guys.
Right.
And so it's not a question of gray scale or gray lines. It's a question of perspective.
Okay.
And if the game allows you to define your perspective on the setting, it will be you and your adventuring partners that decide who are your allies, who are your enemies, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes for another kind of gaming experience, I would say.
It absolutely does, and
Yeah,
that perspective piece is it's hard to achieve.
I think it makes for a unique gaming experience in the ecosystems that we see currently. I think most of the games that we see currently, outside of a few, it's a good number, but it's still in the grand, at least from my perspective, in the grand scheme of things, they are few. Where, again, that perspective is very much played on in games like Symbaroum, Vaesen, Call of Cthulhu.
I would say
like
The Walking Dead also, very much so.
Yeah. Which,
So,
actually, that's a good segue.
well, before we go there, hold on 1 minute. Before we go there,
Uh-huh.
we do have a question here again from the audience,
yeah.
so I'd like to pop in there. And Harper is asking, one thing I've struggled with in writing is that the lead up is always a big deal, but I always feel like it falls flat and is kind of anticlimactic in the end. How do you overcome such a situation to make the ending just as good as the story to get there?
I get the question, I think, but writing role-playing games adventures for publication, I have the luxury of not being able to control that. I mean,
True.
I can facilitate, I can try to provide tools, but the story has to emerge at the table. And yeah, a game master would probably be way better than any AI at, because a story needs structure, it needs foreshadowing, it needs all these kinds of stuff that, but how that plays out, that's decided at the table. I would never want to try to control that as an adventure designer. Do I answer the question?
I think in part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in part. I think I'll add.
I think there's a question for a game master. That's where I'm going.
Yeah,
I think the question is for a game master, not for an adventure designer.
Yeah,
I mean that was a good way to put it. I think I will take what you put out there, Matthias, and kind of piggyback off of that. In that, you as a story writer, and generally you, not specific you, the story writer of any particular game or section of a piece of content, you have your overall story that you want to tell. But if you're writing it for players, be aware that it's not necessarily going to go to form. It's not going to play out exactly the way you want it to, or you imagine it in your head. So you have to be okay with that first and foremost. And you kind of have to divorce yourself from that process, especially the ending. I would say the entire process, but especially the ending, because again, it may not go exactly how you want it to go. And it's not necessarily how you feel about the end of whatever story you have, it's how your players feel about the ending of the story. It may again, they may agree with you and be like, yeah, it was kind of flat at the end, or based on their actions, they may be, this is great. But I think as a creator, as a writer, you kind of have to, especially because you're writing for other people. You're not writing for you. It's different than writing a book. Writing a book, you can literally spell it out and it'll end exactly how you want it. But when you're writing for other people, they're the unknown quantity. They might take it and run all the way to left field with it. So I honestly, I think for me, that's how I would kind of handle that. I would do my best to create a good story, but however it ends, based on the player's interaction with that story, is how it ends. But hopefully, you've written it in such a way where the players feel whatever the goal was has been fulfilled. They've reached they've completed the mission. They've satisfied the requirements, whatever those might be, and they feel like it's come to a satisfying conclusion. I think is the best way that I would kind of put that.
I agree with what this is. This is definitely a game master's question. I think every one of us here is a
Have a
game
different
master
way.
in
Yeah.
some right, and there are differences in how
Mhm.
you do that. One thing is really unique about this question is because it's something that points to um, a knowledge base that we're just learning, and we have somebody who is an expert on this right up here in the corner talking to us today.
Yep.
And and it's something that we're working on right now
Mm.
because we have products that we're developing right now. Quick plug for that, of course, but we're developing a game system, a full game system right now, which a lot of the things we've talked about today have been the struggles that we face with that. And we're also developing 2 separate 4-part modules, which will be debuting for GaryCon 2024. One for Cyberpunk, one for The Witcher.
Mhm.
I at some point in here, we're going to have to do something for a system in it for Free League as well. So that'll be fantastic and exciting.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to that writing, just reading through your question, Harper, I would say this: don't when an adventure module is being created. Okay, so we're writing a module for other DMs. Okay, the idea and the spirit behind that is to create a path to make it easier to facilitate the story for the DM, but not to write it in such a way that it is literally a walkthrough. You have to create enough content and you have to create enough basis in there that you can tell a story, and if they get to choose, they can just run that story if they want to, but it's open enough that they can make the story their own, and then they have basically just the framework there that they can plug in as needed to get to where they want to go. If you as a DM sitting at the table, this is my experience, if you as a DM at the table try to take that and just run right off of that. Okay, so say you take an adventure module and you just, cover to cover, we're going to run right through this module. No matter how great the story is in there, there's a high likelihood that it's going to be flat because you're not putting any of your own creativity or energy into that story. And that's a necessary piece from my standpoint. I say it this way: use that module as a basis to give you an idea, a set of framework, but don't write it all down. What you're talking about, writing the story. Don't write the story. Keep the pieces, write down the pieces that are mechanically important to the story, and then keep the rest up here. That way you can roll with your players and you can let the players tell the story. You just have a framework in front of you. Here's the framework. I'm gonna load you guys into this, and then take me there. Where are we going?
Yep.
You can
The players are
always
gonna
right, and you can as you go through that, if you do have an end in mind, okay, and that's fine. It's okay to have an end in mind. I mean, that's generally the path behind the hero's journey is you have a start, a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. So if you want to keep them on that path, you can always course correct as you go. You can always create scenarios that will bring your group back onto the main storyline.
But it's super important trying to do that in a way that it doesn't feel forced. Because if role-playing games, I'm coming back to this again and again, but what's so great about role-playing games is that, I mean, the agency should be with the players, right? They should feel free for their characters to do, if they want to sort of abandon the mission, and instead travel to a far off country that they've heard of only in legend, they should be allowed to do that. They in the end find it more interesting to come to an agreement with the big bad dark lord instead of actually trying to defeat them. And they should be able, so you cannot write the ending. If you do, write a book or a movie script or something like that. You can set the stage for the ending. I think that's what you were talking about, guys. You know, you have an idea of where it will take place, who will be there, and what the stakes will be like. But if it's a role-playing game, it should be the players and especially their characters, if immersion is good, that makes the call of where how the story ends.
Right.
And the dice, of course, the dice as well. Yeah,
can't forget.
Don't forget the dice.
Can't forget the dice. Chance is a bitch, man.
My old friend, the one, is back.
Yeah. In Symbaroum, the one is a good thing because you roll under.
Oh my goodness! I could use my propensity for natural ones.
I might actually do really good at this game. It sounds like. That's my curse. As a player, I roll absolute.
He rolls terribly.
Horribly.
But then as a DM, I think in one game, this is a sidebar, but in one game we were playing, he rolled at least 6 critical successes. 6. And they were like back to back. It was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The dice were loaded. You can't convince me.
All I can say is that fate decided that they did something bad, so they were being punished.
We pissed somebody off.
It was good. All right. So Walking Dead. We are actually running up on time, so as long as you don't mind, we'll go a little bit over, Matthias. We like to be respectful of our people's time. Do you want to jump into that, Rob? And we can
yeah. Let's jump into
Murder, Mayhem, and The Walking Dead.
Zombies, yeah. I was talking to zombies.
You said the said word.
Let's talk into walkers, as they are properly called. Okay, so I guess my first question with the Walking Dead universe RPG, which I think is the official name, how close does it mirror the shows / the graphic novel that is based off of?
Only the shows.
The shows, okay.
Yeah.
I was very curious when I was looking into it, like how closely does it mirror it? But I mean, the shows are good, so that is definitely not a bad thing.
The vast majority of people know the Walking Dead by the shows,
not
the graphic novels,
not the actual graphic. So I guess my next question for that, how did that come about? Like what was, I guess, the impetus for you guys sitting down and say, hey, let's do a Walking Dead RPG?
Well, to tell you the truth, I am the wrong person to answer that, because when we secured the license, When we talked about it, securing the license, I was one of the loud voices for it because I'm a fan of the TV series, and I'm not a fan of a lot of things. Not in that, there are not many series or whatever movie franchises or book franchises or whatever where I'm on nails to see waiting for the next season. In the case of the Walking Dead, I was so. But when we started this project, because its lead designer is Nils Hintze. Nils Hintze, who also was lead designer on Tales from the Loop and its sister game Things from the Flood, and also on Vaesen. So in this case, once we were in agreement with AMC about the contract, Nils did the first heavy lifting, and I was doing other stuff. We talked about Davokar Awakens, and also we are doing a 5e version of Symbaroum called. So I was sort of in the middle of a lot of other stuff. So yeah, I can't exactly say how it all started, but eventually the manuscript landed in my lap. And in the lap rather of me and my colleague Thomas, who you talked to before. And we started hacking away and discussing stuff with Nils Hintze, and started to, shaping that manuscript into what you see today. Released. It's only a week ago, I think.
Like a week or 2
years. November 28th, I think, was the official release date. So we are so excited to have this at tables all around the world.
Almost 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks ago on Tuesday.
I was seriously tempted to drop everything else off the schedule and go to that, but yeah, I don't think anybody would let me do that. So
he mentioned that a number of times. And before we actually dive too far into The Walking Dead, you actually brought up something that I almost forgot to mention, or ask you about rather, is the conversion of Symbaroum to 5e. That was definitely something that I wanted to touch on, because the systems are very different. So I guess it's a two-part question.
Why?
Why? Yeah, why? That's the first question. Why? And how was it? How was that transition from the Year Zero engine over to
actually Symbaroum isn't Year Zero.
It's not. Oh, no. Okay. Then I stand
corrected.
Year
Zero. Symbaroum is from that company that I come from, Järnringen.
That's right.
Before the merger, so it's its own rule set, as you will soon find out.
Oh yes.
When you start playing. Anyway, the reason is it's pretty simple. We started, once the core book was released, we started going to Gen Con and the UK Games Expo and all of these other smaller and bigger conventions all around the world, and had the pleasure of meeting a lot of players who loved playing the game. But then there were those GMs that came up to us and said, I love this game so much that I cannot get my players to play anything else besides 5e or D20. Maybe this was some time ago. And for us, I mean, yes, the system and setting are very interlinked and sort of one and the same in the game of Symbaroum. So it becomes a different game when you port it to 5e. But we have worked together with a designer, an American designer called Jacob Rogers, who has also done work on a number of other adaptations, 5e adaptations. And he did a really great job. So the Ruins of Symbaroum, as the 5e version is called, it is not Symbaroum and it's not 5e. It's something in between.
In between.
You know.
Right.
So in how it plays, obviously it is 5e mechanics all the way. But for instance, the rest mechanic, you cannot just go take a nap and be fully restored when you play the Symbaroum
Thank
version.
God.
Yeah. So there are a lot of gamers who have said that they have taken our rest mechanic into their normal 5e game.
The more 5e game. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've actually done a little bit of homebrew with that as well. So I'll actually be interested to see that from Symbaroum in the 5e conversion. And we might be taking that, just so you two are aware, because they play in the game that I DM. So I always hated that about D&D, where you can take a nap, wake up, and you're good to go. It's like that makes zero sense, both mechanically and thematically.
Well, I think that was more just of like to keep the story going at a certain pace rather than make like realistic sense, to where you don't have to like wait like a week or whatever for your wounds to heal. You can just keep on going with the adventure. I think that's kind of the intent behind it. Again,
I think so
a piece
too.
of mechanics versus realism.
Have you guys seen our latest release? Or I mean, now Walking Dead is our latest, but before that we released a game called Dragonbane, a fantasy game.
I think we've touched on it behind the scenes a little bit, but I don't think we've done.
No, but it is a little bit more beer and we call it mirth and mayhem role playing. So you can also call it a little bit more beer and pretzels role playing, and we have that same rest mechanic there. So it's like if you have 6 hours in a relatively safe environment, then you're good go again out on your adventure. So it depends on, as you said, Matt, it depends on what kind of game it is and what kind of game experience you want to facilitate.
Yeah, because I mean, like, like one of the questions I always think about when it comes to game mechanics is how far into realism should we be going in? Because there, on one level, you want a certain level of realism that like things make a certain level of like sense. But then there are times where you kind of have to stretch that a bit, because sometimes being too realistic on something doesn't exactly make for a fun game. Like, we talk about like, the need to use the restroom. That'd be realistic for any situation. How many games do you see include?
Yeah, and the fact that people evacuate before combat.
True.
That is
during combat.
That is not something that you see in any games.
Yeah.
So
fair point. Fair point. But okay, so that now that we can put Symbaroum to bed for now anyway. We'll have to pick it back up later, so we can torture some people. Anyway, Walking Dead. I'm gonna open the floor up to Greg and Matt. I've been doing a bunch of yapping. Greg, I know you've been dying to ask him some questions, so feel free.
Well, I don't know about dying to ask questions. I mean, we've kind of ran through quite a bit of this already. And when it comes to the Walking Dead's, the concept behind that, what would you say the focus is for the RPG? Is it? Yeah, go. You got an idea? I mean,
yeah. It's drama. It's survival drama, and it's very much interpersonal drama, I would say. So, and obviously the setting being like it is, with lots of undead walkers roaming about, hungering for your flesh. All these conflicts that would have been, I mean, nonsense in a normal situation, everything becomes so much more heightened. it's enough for you to raise your voice a little bit too much, and you will be overrun by a horde of walkers. I mean, so
Right.
yeah, so yeah, that it's a survivalist. No, it isn't. I correct myself. It is an interpersonal drama in a survivalist environment. I feel super happy with myself for that phrase I just came up with.
I mean, I
Please.
think
I like it.
because
Please say it was good.
It was very good, actually, and very accurate.
Yeah, because like
to be honest,
what you see in a lot of like zombie settings, in other movies, shows, etc., is that the main focus is rarely the zombies themselves. The narrative focus is usually on how the people act with each other when faced with this threat. That's always where the narrative is. So yeah, having the focus of your game be the interactions between the people, the drama there, that's so in line with what these stories are always about.
Well, I think it would be honestly speaking that's definitely the appeal piece to it. Not that the zombies are not an appeal piece to it, but the zombies make they set the difficulty of the environment, because all the things that you take advantage of right now, that or take for granted right now, become problematic when you add zombies. That it would be hard to tell, just my opinion here, but it would be hard to create a game and tell a story that was compelling and interesting over time if all it was zombies. I think that dramatic effect, the people interactions, and what happens. The question is, what happens to society when society breaks down? What happens to the people? And what happens when you can't just call can't call Uber anymore to bring you your food?
Guess I'll starve.
Your cell phone doesn't work. Oh no, life ended.
I'm giving up, guys. I'm done. This isn't for me. Good luck to the rest of you guys. I'm bowing out early.
I'm going back to 2020. Let's go. 2021. I don't want this zombie shit no more.
Well, right, and then taking that environment and putting it into a role playing game where, I mean, there's other mutant. Okay, there's other post apocalyptic style games that are out there. I'll put it this way: The Walking Dead and the world behind that is something that, I mean, I remember back in high school. My friends and I taking systems where we actually had done a modified version of the cyberpunk system, and we created a Walking Dead world. And we at a certain point we decided, maybe not that. And then we modified Warhammer 40K, because that was a little bit more friendly to the idea with the Chaos Armies and all that stuff. And we made a new version, and we used Rogue Trader to make, you know what I mean? So, I mean, multiple versions of The Walking Dead, so to speak. So to have this game now, I wish I would have created, but but to have this game now is, I mean, that's definitely it's a highlight. I very much look forward to doing something with it, playing it, and getting it on a stream so we can share it with as many people as possible.
Very, very happy to hear it. I think there are going to be those who were expecting a different kind of game. That a game that was more about zombie slaughter kind of action. This is not that game. Walkers don't even have individual stats in this game. They are more like an environmental threat. Um,
which is very much in keeping with the show.
Oh
Because the
yeah,
walkers aren't a
the,
threat.
the thing is that those who are a bit surprised about how this game looks and runs may not have seen very much of the show, I think, because
True.
if I would commend Nils Hintze for one thing, it's the fact that and I think he said this at some point also, that he had watched and rewatched all the 11 seasons of the main series and also some of the like Fear the
Spin-offs.
Walking Dead
Yep.
and spin-offs. And he wanted to come up with a system that would cover for or explain every situation that appeared on screen. So everything that happens in those shows could happen in this game. And I think he nailed that. I think he did. You don't have to agree. I mean, but just go ahead, give it a spin. And I'm super excited about what we have done together here.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to play it. I do have a question in regards to, I guess, obviously the game just released, but like future plans, because I know with Symbaroum you guys pretty much already had I believe it was amounted to a 6-chapter kind of built-in story to I guess what would be considered the core game, called the Throne of Thorns. Again, I'm trying to say that fast.
Throne of Thorns.
Yeah, and it kind of, again, it ended up being 6 kind of chapters, starting with obviously the core rulebook of Symbaroum, and then running into ending with Davokar Awakens. Is that a similar, or rather, is there a similar approach to The Walking Dead?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And why? I mean, Symbaroum is, as I said, I'm a big fan of these grand campaigns. So to some extent, it's fair to say that Symbaroum as a game was designed to tell the story of the Throne of Thorns.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what it felt like to me, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you can play the game without ever playing one single session of the Throne of Thorns adventures, but that is how that game, that's why it looks like it does. Anyway, gotcha. The Walking Dead is I would say that basically everything you need to play a number of huge campaigns is in the core book. It is a game that is designed to have stories evolve organically based on the interaction, the action of the players and their characters, and the interaction between them and the environment. So, I mean, it's not designed to tell this one big epic story, but rather to let the table decide where the story goes and how it moves. That being said, we have a second game mode that is called the survival.
Yeah, I think you have solo, survival, and I think there's a third.
Survival mode, it's called. Yeah. So, and it's, if you played Alien, it's kind of similar to the cinematic mode, in that it is basically one-shot scenarios where it's all about trying to survive, and you have pre-made characters with predefined relations and secrets and whatnot. So it becomes sort of a high-paced action drama that you most often can run on 1 or 2 nights, depending on how long you play, of course. And at the moment, we don't have I mean, we have a lot of ideas, and we also have a lot of sketches. But we wanna see this game touch ground, land, make a splash, and see what kind of splash it makes, and what people are excited about, and before we announce anything about
Give-
future products. So
Gotcha.
unfortunately, I have to be a little bit boring in that
No,
respect.
no,
tonight.
that's entirely okay, man. Again, it just released, so
Mm.
I totally understand that.
Well, you gotta-
anything
you
coming
got
out, you gotta be a little hush about.
you also have to give the market a chance to react,
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
can see
Yeah.
where it needs to go. Yeah, I mean there is that piece to it that's very important as well.
And I do like that you guys, Freely Press and the other the other pair of that duo, which I'm not gonna try to pronounce because I might get it wrong. You guys are very much player focused. You're player. You're driven to allow the players to tell the stories that they want to tell. In a lot of the games systems that we've seen so far, where the player has agency on the direction of the story, how things are going to fall out, and not to say the DM doesn't have a role, because the DM's role is just as important, where they're helping facilitate that storytelling process and helping keep the framework.
But let me just say that it's not a strategy or a plan.
Mm,
It's just that is how role-playing games work.
I agree with that.
And as a designer, you either work with that or against it, and working against it is probably a really bad idea. What I mean to say is that, I mean, we from early age, we never took or ran adventures exactly like they were written.
That is very true.
We made house rules from very early age.
Mm,
This is a community of creatives, I would say. I worked a bit in the computer games industry. I've also written a couple of novels, and when I meet people to talk about those kind of things, say that I go to a convention or whatnot, I meet and talk to consumers, or when I go to a role-playing games conventions, I go and I talk to co-producers or co-creators,
mm.
co-designers even. And so, and knowing that this is the case, I guess that shows in how we design and present our games.
Yeah.
But it's not like some a mission that we are it's just, but this is how role playing works, and this is one of the things that make role playing games so fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you in that regard, where again, I wasn't trying to say that it seems like that's kind of how you guys want to create all your games. It just seems like that's your design philosophy and kind of how you approach it. Where, hey, let's make sure that the storytelling process is first of all cooperative between the GM and the players, but also it allows for adjustments based on each table. Because again, like you said, house rules, home brewing, that, I mean, I would say that is almost as old as the role-playing games themselves. People started adjusting rules to fit their tables and their players and kind of what they wanted to see, and it hasn't stopped since, and it's never going to. And that's great. That's a great thing, because out of that, I think you get great stories, you get great communities that just continue to build and create, which is personally what I want to see. What else do we have for The Walking Dead? Well,
I think that last piece was a generalized
Yeah, no. I know. I'm trying to remember. I had a question regarding The Walking Dead. I'm trying to remember what it was. I need to start writing this stuff down.
I mean, I'll ask this question, and maybe it's been like at least partially answered already. But like, what is it that you think makes the Walking Dead universe RPG like unique as a role playing game? What makes it like stand out from the others of the genre?
Uh, I don't know if I can answer that because uh, I don't know very many games in this genre. I have hardly ever even read many of the other undead sort of Walker-esque role-playing games.
I'm
But
not
what
aware.
I can tell you what makes it stand out from our catalog, and we have quite a lot of games today. And I would say this is probably the game that focuses the most on character drama, where sort of the characters are, I mean, as you said, we try to keep the player and the character at the center of it all, always. But here, the character is really the engine that makes the story run. Not only in the sense that the player has a lot of agency, but also in the sense that your most important stats are, I would argue, your issues, which is like stuff that are in some way problematic with your person. That makes it difficult for you to live in the world of the dead. And these issues are something that the game master can pick up at any time and design challenges based on those. So it's a system that is very centered around the character. That is, I don't know, that you probably wanted me to say something about the walkers, but
No, I mean, I think that answer very much covers it, because again, it's like not just about the walkers, the zombies, whatever you want to call them. It's it's about how people act within that setting and how they interact with other people. That's always been the heart of the zombie genre of stories. So the fact that your game really hones in on that, I think keeps it in line with the type of stories within that genre, but also make the game unique in of itself, apart from other role playing games, which have
sure.
varying levels of how much they lean into interpersonal conflict.
So we have a question here for you from Old Man Garrus. Have the team at the Generation of Living campaign / world similar to TDE with Dragonbane and Symborum? You already have the start of Incredible Worlds. There's a lot in that, so I'm not really sure where the question is. Possibly you picked it out.
Yeah.
You want to rephrase that a little bit, Garrus? Have they thought of making a living campaign?
Gotcha.
I guess that's the boiled down version.
Yeah.
I think the answer to that is probably, well, I don't know. The way it sounded, who knows where this will go, but right now it's not ready to be shared, maybe?
Yeah.
Does that sound right, Matthias?
I don't know if I wasn't sure if this was directed to me. Have the team at the generation. Nah, I don't know how to answer that.
I think the question is,
Uh,
if I'm parsing this properly, is basically he's asking
You
if
know I'm Swedish, right? You have to spell things out.
I think he's asking if the guys of if you guys of Free League have kind of thought of or potentially already generated a living campaign / world um, for The Walking Dead, similar to like the likes of like Symbaroum and Dragonbane, wherein you've kind of already really built a really great world in those
Okay.
two IPs. I think that's the question.
If that's a question, I would say that the the stage or the setting where the Walking Dead universe RPG plays out, it's even more elaborate.
Gotcha.
It's even darker. It's even it's called reality.
Oh, that is true.
It's this world.
Yeah, actually, I think that.
And
Yeah,
then
that
you
is
add
something-
zombies
Yeah, I think
or
that's
walkers.
something
So
that's
no,
easily forgettable. Yeah.
we talked about that a lot because obviously I'm one of those designers who love to do work with setting and lore and whatnot. But this the Walking Dead universe role playing game is not. It takes place here in our world with one crucial difference. So, and the idea is that you should be able to play it in your backyard or in your apartment complex or at your, the game starts at the one of your favorite vacation spots or whatnot. So yeah, this is more very much a game where we try to facilitate the telling of vastly different and personalized stories that sort of spring up around the tables.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you guys have not necessarily crafted like living worlds similar to like the chapters of the Throne of Thorns, but more you've set the stage, at least in the Walking Dead IP, where the players can kind of do that on their own. Like they have like the onus and the agency to create that living world for that particular table, which I honestly I think it's a really great way to do it, because then it's more personalized. It's internal to you and the players.
Yeah, I mean, The Walking Dead, because it's so much about the characters. It's difficult to design grander stories that would assume that the player characters had specific goals.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. We in the Walking Dead universe, part of what makes it fun is that you and your friends get to define what you want to achieve, what goals you want to strive for in this setting, and you can be pretty sure that your so-called friends, they won't tell you everything, so they will have their own secret agendas as well, probably. Maybe not all of them, but some of them.
That's definitely interesting.
So here's a little expansion on that question for you, Matthias. TDE is a setting that has been running since the 1980s. They do global events that everyone playing can run, and results are sent back to the publisher, who then changes the world based on the outcomes.
And to expand on that, I actually looked up the acronym TDE. It's the Dark Eye Universe, I believe.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry. Didn't really pick that up.
Yeah. Don't worry, I didn't either. That's why I had to look it up.
That would be insanely cool. I must admit, to do that for the Walking Dead universe.
That would be actually pretty
Ooh.
cool. Or even for Symbaroum or like Dragon's Bane. I think that
Like crank
honestly,
anything up, really.
Yeah.
I think that would be really dope. Like taking character
Yeah.
generated
Oh yeah.
stories and incorporating them into your system on a world kind of stage.
Here's an interesting idea
Wow.
around that is then they already have these. I forget what publisher has been doing these, but they already have 3 or 4 versions of stories from essentially stories from The Walking Dead, which are novels that are put together of short stories that were created around that Walking Dead genre.
That would be really.
That would
Sorry,
be
I'm stuck on that.
well. That would be a really way off topic for where we are right now, but that would be a really interesting idea for
Yeah, I mean,
future, yeah. Huh.
Yeah. Instead of answering that question, I will take with me what it implies. And
you're not the only one who's gonna take it with you, because I am too.
Yeah.
Trust me, we're gonna have a conversation about this.
That's interesting. That's such an
Because
interesting way to handle things.
I honestly didn't know that was a thing. I mean, obviously there's some drawbacks, and then we're getting off on a tangent here. There are some limitations there, because if you're taking tons of input from a bunch of different sources, it's like, well, how is that all going to play out in the I guess genealogy of the world that you're building? You know, if events clash, time frames don't work, or you have a similar event but completely different outcomes. Which one do you take? But that is an interesting design piece that could. Okay, thank you, Garrus.
Giving us all something to think about.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about there.
Well, in the spirit of how we do this with the interviews, Matties, now that we've had a first interview with you, kind of a sit down, get to know each other, as new projects are coming up, as new games are coming out for Free League Press, we like to keep that door open and invite our folks back on again in the future to talk a little bit more specifically about the new releases that are coming up. And when we do the generally the idea is when we do a one shot of a system or a campaign system, such as we did with Alien over the last 6 weeks, we always invite one of the creators or the creator that if they wanted to join us for the game, they are more than welcome. So we'll extend that to you as well. If you decide, either way, it's completely fine. We just keep a spot open for that person.
Yep. Open invitation.
Right.
Thank you very much, and of course, you know where to find us. So you only have to reach out, and we'll see. Maybe me and Thomas can come together at some point as well.
That would be fantastic. Yeah.
That would actually be.
You are part of the Discord now, so you have your own little space in there too. So
yeah,
that's definitely where we'll probably reach out to you directly. Sorry, Greg, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just that's a good. I had not thought of that idea of getting Matties and Thomas on at the same time to kind of really. I mean, because you guys are kind of at the heart of the Free League organization.
I mean, we are the core team of Free League is, I would say, 5 people that work full time and are co-owners, and then we have a group of consultants that help us with everything from event planning and PR and support, layout and whatnot. But the core team is pretty small, so we are all at the heart of it. The 5 of us, or even the 6 of us, we are trying to make him quit his day job. So we'll see how it goes.
I know Free League does a lot of shows and conventions,
Hmm?
quite a few in the U.S. and around the world, the way I understand it. I've had the pleasure of meeting a few of the people, such as Doug, here in the U.S., and a few other folks that work with Free League. And I know that Free League, not only are you guys very good with the designers, the developers, the writers, the creators that you work with, but you're also very good with your people in the field, from what I understand, and that is
That's
fantastic.
very good to hear. We try to be, but I'm 100% sure that we can always get better at that as well. So,
you and I share that, because that's that's kind of my philosophy on people in general. Is you're either there's no level ground. You're either working on getting better or you're getting worse.
yeah, exactly. No, but that's I mean, I was happy a happy camper over at GameOlCon in
So you were right up here in my backyard in Milwaukee, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or I mean, it's Madison, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Okay, Game Holes Madison. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
yeah, and
it's just a couple of months ago, and
right.
and it was fantastic.
This year we didn't do
Fantastic.
the primary one. Well, really, the only one we actually did this year was Gen Con. And I mean, we did that was primarily working directly with Artelsorian Games, and then doing some networking with Free League, Modifius. It's actually where we met with and discussed some ideas around the GaryCon coming up here in March with the crew from GaryCon, Luke and that group. Now next year we will be putting together a little more. Obviously, GaryCon's on there, but we'll be putting together a little bit more of a schedule for events in the U.S. as to what we're going to be attending, and in what capacity we want to attend those.
Yep.
But
because I mean, as you know, cons can be exhausting, both as a goer and as a presenter.
they are.
They can wear you out.
Well, but
it's usually always fun just to go there to browse and buy.
That's early on in our conversation this morning. You, Matties, you mentioned the whole brand building thing, which I mean, that's right where we are at.
Yep.
The brand that nobody knows about, but
yet.
No, it's a marathon.
Yeah. Oh, it is. We are learning that for sure. It definitely is the long game. Let's see. But in the interest of again not keeping you up too late, because it is now, I believe, 8:12, I believe, over there.
Yeah, that's
we are
right.
So almost 45 minutes overdue. So I really appreciate your patience and sticking with us.
Not a problem. My stomach is starting to make some noise because
gotcha.
I'm late for dinner.
Dinner time, yes.
But yeah, so in the interest again of letting you go grab something to eat and just again relax for the rest of your evening. Thank you, Matties, for coming on, for talking about Symbrom.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for, again, answering the questions of our audience and interacting. Thank you guys, our audience, for coming in and talking with us, with Mattias. And I guess that is it, unless anybody has anything else.
Get the real quick announcements piece. So join us Wednesday night at 7 p.m. We'll be doing a regular episode of the update log for Rob.
Yep. Well, 8 p.m. EST for those who live on the right side of the U.S. It is. We're actually going to be going over the Game Awards. that just happened. I want to say Saturday. Friday.
Friday.
Okay, yeah, it's Friday.
Yeah, because it was happening while we were having our stream.
That's right, it
on
was.
Friday.
We will be going into
wasn't Friday, that was
basically the Game
Wednesday, sorry.
Awards, talking about the nominees, the winners, and
Everything.
all that has to do with that. Apparently, there's already controversy about it.
There always is.
Not surprised there. So yeah, we'll be going into that on Wednesday, and then Thursday we will be going into our Witcher one shot. So keep an eye on that. Again, for those of you who don't know, we did finish our Alien playthrough. So go ahead and go binge watch that. It was fun. Everyone died. Except the captain, scumbag.
Bro, spoilers.
Oh
yeah, spoilers, my bad.
It's a deal,
I'm mad
man.
at that.
You don't let people like you find out for themselves here.
Don't worry, they'll go back and
the
watch
captain
it.
is not a scumbag. He's just smart.
The
rest of you just make bad decisions. Anyway,
that's
we're
a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B there.
All right, thank you.
So that's happening next Thursday, Wednesday and Thursday, guys.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Thank you very much, everybody in the audience tonight, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Everybody have a good day.
You guys have a good afternoon. Adios. Good evening.